The warm, sweet smell of apple pie filled Rosa's small kitchen, a smell that usually made her feel safe. Today, it did nothing to calm her shaking hands. Her new neighbor had moved into the giant, lonely house next door, and being a good neighbor was the only way to stay invisible, to stay safe. She had built a life of quiet routines here, a life where no one looked at her twice. Taking a deep breath, she picked up the pie and walked across the lawn, her heart thumping a wild, scared rhythm against her ribs. The door swung open before she could even knock, and the world stopped. Standing there, taller and more solid than in her worst nightmares, was Donatello Bellini, the man they called the Wolf, the man whose cold, hard eyes she had stared into across a packed courtroom 10 years ago, the man she had helped put in a prison cell. Her breath caught in her throat, and for a terrifying second, she was sure she would drop the pie or scream. But his face broke into a warm, easy smile. "Well, hello there," he said, his voice a friendly rumble. He looked ordinary, charming even. "I'm Rosa, from next door. I brought you a welcome pie," she stammered, her voice a shaky whisper. "Danny," he said, taking the pie. His fingers brushed against hers, and a jolt shot up her arm. "Please call me Danny. It's a real pleasure to meet you, Rosa. This is mighty kind." He acted like he had never seen her before, like she was just a nice woman from next door. He chatted about the town, the weather, and somehow, he charmed her right over his doorstep and into his kitchen for a cup of coffee. She sat at his table, her body rigid with fear, sipping the bitter drink while he smiled. It was a game, she was sure of it. The cat playing with a very, very scared mouse. Finally, she escaped, mumbling an excuse about feeding her cat. She practically ran from his house. But as she stepped onto her porch, the summer breeze carried his voice through his still-open door, deep and clear, no longer friendly but sharp as a blade. "She's perfect," he told someone else inside. "The FBI will never suspect the woman who put me away is helping me now." Rosa's blood turned to ice. She fumbled with her own keys, stumbling into her dark house and locking the door behind her. Leaning against it, she slid to the floor, her whole body trembling. Then, she pulled a secret, second phone from a hidden pocket in her dress. Her fingers flew across the screen, sending a message to a number she knew by heart. First contact made. Subject goes by Danny. "He does not recognize me." A few days later, Danny was at her door again, all easy smiles. "I'm still learning my way around this little town, Rosa. Would you be a sweetheart and show me the main street?" He was so polite, so normal. She couldn't say no. Saying no would be suspicious. They were walking past the small post office when the world exploded into noise. A black car screeched to a halt, and men with guns leaped out. Rosa froze, a scream trapped in her throat. "Get down!" Donatello roared. He didn't run. He moved like lightning, wrapping his powerful arms around her and hurling them both behind a thick, metal mailbox. Bullets pinged and sparked against it. He shielded her completely with his body. She heard him grunt, a sharp, pained sound, and felt him flinch. When the car sped away, silence returned, ringing and strange. "Are you hit?" he asked, his voice tight. She shook her head, unable to speak. He was clutching his arm, blood seeping through his white shirt. "It's just a scratch," he insisted, but his face was pale. Ripping a piece of fabric from the bottom of her sundress, she pressed it hard against the wound to stop the bleeding. That's when she saw it. On the inside of his wrist, just above his pounding pulse, was a scar. A perfect, star-shaped scar. Her eyes widened. Her breath caught. She knew that scar. She had seen it 10 years ago, reaching through smoke and flames, pulling her from the burning orphanage. It belonged to her guardian angel, the mysterious man who had saved her and then vanished. That man and Donatello Bellini were the same person. Back at his house, as a private doctor patched him up, Rosa felt her whole world tilting. The man she had feared, the man she had betrayed, was the same man who had saved her life long before she'd ever spoken his name in a courtroom. That night, alone in his study, Donatello unlocked a heavy desk drawer. He pulled out a single, worn file. Inside was a faded newspaper clipping about an orphanage fire. Paperclipped to it was a photograph of a little girl with soot on her cheeks and wide, terrified eyes. It was a young Rosa. He traced the shape of her face with a gentle finger, his own hard eyes filled with a storm of confusion and pain. "I finally found you," he whispered to the empty room. "Now, I need to find out why you betrayed me." The sky turned a furious gray later that week, and the storm that hit was a monster. Rain lashed the windows, and the wind howled like a wild animal. The lights in Rosa's house flickered once, twice, and then died, plunging her into darkness. A moment later, a firm knock sounded at her door. It was Donatello, holding a powerful flashlight. "The whole street's out," he said. "My house has a generator. It's warm and there's light. You shouldn't be alone in the dark." He wasn't asking. Trapped by the weather and his will, she followed him back to his brightly lit home. The storm raged outside, but inside, a strange quiet peace settled over them. They talked for hours, not as a mafia boss and the woman who betrayed him, but as two people. He told her stories about growing up in a loud, messy family, always feeling responsible for everyone. She found herself telling him about growing up with no family at all, about the deep loneliness that had been her only friend. The fear she felt around him began to melt, replaced by a dangerous and powerful understanding. The air between them crackled with a new energy, a magnetic pull she could no longer fight. He reached out, his hand cupping her cheek. His thumb gently wiped away a tear she didn't know she had shed. "Rosa," he murmured, her name a prayer on his lips. He leaned in and she met him halfway. The kiss was not gentle. It was a wildfire, full of 10 years of anger, confusion, and a desperate, shocking hope. It was a kiss that promised everything and threatened to destroy everything all at once. The next morning, the storm was gone. The sun shone, and the hum of the electricity returning filled the house. The spell was broken. Feeling confused and guilty, Rosa gathered her things to leave. As she slipped on her coat, a stiff corner of paper poked her finger from the pocket. Puzzled, she pulled it out. It was an old, faded photograph. In it, a beautiful woman with Rosa's own smiling eyes had her arm linked with a young, handsome man. The man was Donatello. The woman was her mother, a mother she had only seen in one other, much sadder picture. Her mother, who she believed had simply abandoned her, was here, looking happier than Rosa had ever imagined, with the man she had sent to prison. Her hands trembled so hard she almost dropped the photo. She turned it over. On the back, in a strong, familiar handwriting, was a message that shattered the last pieces of her old life. "Your mother didn't abandon you. She was my first and only love until she was murdered. I promised her I'd always protect you." The photograph felt like a live wire in Rosa's hand, burning her with a truth she couldn't understand. She didn't run. She didn't hide. With the picture clutched in her fist, she marched back across the lawn to Donatello's house, storming past a startled bodyguard and finding him in his study, sipping espresso as if he hadn't just blown up her entire world. She slammed the photo onto his desk. "What is this?" Her voice was raw, trembling with a storm of confusion and rage. "You knew my mother? You tell me everything. Right now." Donatello didn't flinch. He looked from the photo to her furious, heartbroken face, and his own hard expression softened with a pain so deep it seemed to age him. He gestured for her to sit. She remained standing. "Her name was Angelina," he began, his voice low and heavy with memory. "She was my everything. We grew up together. She was light and laughter, and I was already shadowed by my family's business. She hated that world. She wanted out." He explained how a rival family, seeking to hurt his, had targeted her. "They set a bomb under her car, Rosa. She was murdered because she loved me." He looked directly at her, his dark eyes filled with an ancient pain. "On the night she died, she made me promise. She was pregnant with you. She made me swear I would protect you, that I would keep you safe from our world, no matter what." A terrifying thought, ugly and cold, flashed through Rosa's mind. She stared at him, her voice a horrified whisper. Are you my father?" The look on Donatello's face was not one of hidden truth, but of pure, stunned shock. "No, Rosa. Never." The word was absolute, a solid wall. Your father was a good man, a mechanic from our neighborhood who loved your mother with his whole heart. He died in the same car bomb that took her from us. I loved your mother, but I am not your father. My promise was to protect my best friend's daughter, the last piece of the two best people I ever knew. This clarification shattered the last of her old life and built a new, even more complicated one. He had kept his promise from the shadows. The money that mysteriously appeared at the orphanage for her books, the anonymous donor for her school trips, it was all him. He was the one who had pulled her from the fire, scarring his own wrist on a burning beam, because he was always watching, honoring a debt to her parents. And then 10 years ago, he said, his voice turning cold and brittle, you walked into that courtroom. The girl I had sworn to protect. You looked me in the eye and you lied. You helped them put me in a cage. I have spent a decade in a prison of concrete and another of confusion, asking myself one question. Why? Why would you do that, Rosa? Rosa felt the floor drop out from beneath her. The righteous anger drained from her, replaced by a horrifying, sinking guilt. She had been used. She had been fed lies by the FBI, told Donatello was a monster who had ordered the death of an innocent woman. A woman who was, in fact, her own mother. She had helped imprison her mother's avenger. Her testimony was the greatest betrayal of all. As she stood there, reeling, Donatello delivered the final, earth-shattering blow. There is more, he said, standing up. Your mother, Angelina, she wasn't just my love. She was Angelica Rossi, the only daughter of Alberto Rossi. He paused, letting the name hang in the air, the most feared mafia boss of the previous generation. She was the true heir to the entire family empire. When your grandfather died, his will named her as his successor. She refused it, for me, for the chance of a normal life. But bloodlines are everything in our world, Rosa. By that right, the legitimate businesses, the fortunes, the power, it all belongs to you. You are the true heir, a secret your mother died to protect you from. The safe house was a cramped, dusty cabin deep in the woods, a world away from their comfortable suburban street. The air was thick with tension and the smell of pine. Donatello was cleaning a gun with a practiced, calm efficiency that unnerved Rosa. She was the heir to a crime empire. The concept was so vast and terrifying she couldn't wrap her mind around it. My brother, Matteo, took control after I was imprisoned, Donatello explained, his voice a low grumble. He was always hungry for power, but he's a snake, not a wolf. He rules through lies and fear. He looked at her, his gaze intense. He must have found out about you. About your bloodline. You are the only person alive who can legally challenge his control over the family's legitimate companies. You are a piece of paper he can't burn and a truth he can't kill. That makes you his #1 target. As if summoned by his name, the night outside erupted. Headlights cut through the darkness, and the roar of engines drowned out the crickets. Get down! Donatello yelled, shoving her to the floor as the front windows exploded in a shower of glass. Gunfire ripped through the cabin, splintering wood and shredding furniture. But something was wrong. Donatello had taken a defensive position, ready for an assault on his location. But the bullets weren't aimed at him. They were concentrated on the spot where Rosa had been standing. A masked man burst through the door, his gun pointed directly at her head, ignoring Donatello completely. Donatello fired first, dropping the man with a single, precise shot. They're not here for me, he growled, pulling a stunned Rosa to her feet and toward the back door. They're here for you. They escaped into the cold, dark woods, the sounds of the attack fading behind them. Huddled under the thick roots of a fallen tree, their breath misting in the frigid air, Rosa's secret phone vibrated. Her heart leaped with a flicker of hope. Her handler. The FBI would extract her. They would protect her. She pulled it out, the screen's dim light illuminating her terrified face. The message was short, brutal, and utterly final. The message read, Asset Esposito. Original mission is terminated. New priority, eliminate the heir, Rosa Esposito. She is a key figure in the Bellini succession and a confirmed threat to national security. Remove the threat. Acknowledge. The phone nearly slipped from her numb fingers. The FBI. The people who had molded her, used her, turned her into a weapon against the man who had sworn to protect her, now wanted her dead. She wasn't an agent anymore. She was a loose end. A threat to be removed. She had nowhere to run. The mafia and the law were both hunting her. Her only shelter was the man she had betrayed. "They want me dead," she whispered, her voice hollow. She showed Donatello the phone. His eyes scanned the message, and a storm of fury gathered in his expression. But it wasn't directed at her. "Who gave you this order? Who is your handler?" It was the moment of truth. There were no more lies left to hide behind. "My name is Rosa Esposito," she said, the words tasting like ash. "But 10 years ago, the FBI, they recruited me. They promised me a new life, a new identity, protection. They told me you were a monster who had my mother killed. They told me my testimony was for justice." She looked at him, tears finally spilling over. "I didn't know, Donatello. I didn't know about my mother. I didn't know about you. I was just a scared, lonely girl they used as a pawn." She expected rage. She expected violence. Instead, a grim, cold understanding settled on his face. The great mystery of his life was solved. His anger wasn't for her. It was for the men who had manipulated her, who had turned a promise of protection into a weapon against him. "Then we are both trapped," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "Mateo wants you dead for your name. The FBI wants you dead for your blood. There is only one way out." He laid out a plan, brutal and simple. They would fake her death. They would stage a scene so convincing it would fool both the Mafia and the FBI, making Rosa Esposito vanish from the face of the earth forever. The plan required them to be closer than ever, their intimacy a desperate performance for an unseen audience. They held each other in the dark, not with the fiery passion of before, but with the grim determination of two soldiers in a trench. Their touches were plans, their whispers were strategies, their kisses were a shield against the world that wanted to destroy them. They chose an old, abandoned warehouse by the docks for the final act. As planned, Donatello's most trusted man, posing as one of Mateo's assassins, fired a shot. Donatello cried out, a perfect performance of agony, and crumpled to the grimy concrete, a hidden packet of fake blood bursting under his shirt. Rosa ran to him, playing her part, her screams echoing in the vast space. He grabbed her arm, his grip firm. "Listen to me," he choked out, pressing a cold, metal key into her palm, slick with the fake blood. "The safety deposit box, at First National, it has your mother's final letter for you. Her last words. Take it and run. Don't look back." It was a perfect, heartbreaking moment. A final gift, a last connection to the mother she never knew. A reason to survive. As she took the key, her fingers closing around it, his other hand, hidden from her view, moved with a ghost's precision. He slipped a tiny, metallic disc, no bigger than a button, into the deep pocket of her coat. It was a tracking device. Even in their most vulnerable, seemingly trusting moment, even as he gave her the key to her past, the wolf ensured he could always find his heir. He was letting her run, but he was never, ever going to let her go. The key felt cold and heavy in Rosa's hand, a final, bloody gift from a man she thought was dead. Donatello was gone. The world believed she was gone too. She was a ghost now, with nothing but a key and a heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Using all her training, she moved through the city like a shadow, arriving at the First National Bank just as it opened. The safety deposit box was small and metal, its contents life-changing. Inside, there was no stack of cash, no bearer bonds. There was only a single, yellowed envelope, addressed to her in a flowing, elegant script she recognized from her mother's one surviving birthday card. With trembling fingers, Rosa broke the seal. "My dearest Rosa, if you are reading this, you are finally old enough to know the truth, and the world has finally become dangerous enough that you need to. I did not die in that car bomb. I saw the hatred in my father's eyes when I chose a simple life over his empire. I knew he would never let me go, and he would never let you be free. So I ran. I made the world believe I was dead to protect you, my darling girl. It was the hardest choice I have ever made. I have left you a key to a peaceful future. The money I took, not from the family's cruelty, but from my own mother's legitimate inheritance, is hidden. It is buried under the old lake house, the place where I was happiest. It is your legacy, clean and true. Use it to build a life I could only dream of. And Rosa, trust Donatello. He is stubborn and fierce, but his heart is loyal. He does not know I live. I made him believe I was gone so he would not spend his life searching for a ghost. He is your protector, not your enemy. He was the only one I ever trusted to keep you safe when I could not. With all my love, forever. Your mother, Angelina. The letter slipped from Rosa's numb fingers. The world spun. Her mother was alive. The lake house wasn't a mystery. It was the charming, slightly rundown house by the small lake that she had been living in for the past 3 years. The fortune wasn't in some far-off land. It was buried in her own backyard. And the final horrifying piece clicked into place. The kind-faced FBI agent who had recruited her, who had filled her head with lies about Donatello murdering her mother, had been the one to plant the bomb. He hadn't just used her, he had stolen her life to cover his own crime. The FBI agent who recruited her wasn't just cleaning up a loose end, he was the man who had actually killed her mother, or tried to, and framed Donatello for it, all to secure his own position and keep the truth buried forever. Rosa didn't run. A cold, clear fury settled over her. She had a fortune to dig up and a score to settle. She drove home, not as a frightened waitress, but as Angelina Rossi's daughter. In the soft earth beneath her old oak swing set, her shovel hit metal. A large, waterproof crate. Inside were stacks of gold, jewels, and documents for offshore accounts. A king's ransom of clean money, waiting for decades. As she stood over it, the tracker in her pocket did its job. Tires screeched. Donatello's car skidded to a halt, and he leaped out, very much alive. But they weren't alone. Matteo's black SUVs surrounded the property, and stepping out from behind one, with a smug, triumphant smile, was her FBI handler, Agent Miller. "I knew you'd lead us to it, Rosa," Miller said, his gun raised. The money and the air, all in one tidy package. Chaos erupted. Donatello moved like a storm, a force of nature fueled by a decade of pent-up rage. He wasn't just fighting for power now, he was fighting for her. Rosa didn't hide. She fought beside him, using the fortune not as a treasure to protect, but as a weapon, hurling a bag of gold bars to shatter the windshield of an SUV, creating a distraction. It was a brutal, final dance. Donatello disarmed Miller, and Rosa, with a cry of pure fury, tackled the man who had stolen her family, holding him down until the police, the real police, alerted by an anonymous tip from Donatello, arrived to take him away. Matteo, seeing his empire of lies crumble, tried to flee but was captured by his own men, who now saw the true strength standing with Rosa and Donatello. The fight was over. Silence returned to the lake house. Donatello stood before her, breathing heavily, his clothes torn. "The tracker," he said, no hint of apology in his voice. "I told you once, I protect what is mine. And you, Rosa Esposito, have always been mine to protect." Then he did something she never expected. Donatello Bellini, the wolf, got down on one knee in the grass. It wasn't a proposal of marriage, but of loyalty. "The family is yours by blood, Rosa. It always has been. I have only been its keeper. I will follow you, or I will walk away if you command it. My loyalty was always to your mother, and now it is, and always will be, to you." He took the heavy, onyx ring from his finger, the ancient symbol of the family's power, and offered it to her. Rosa looked at the ring, a symbol of so much fear and bloodshed. Then she looked at the crate of gold, a symbol of the future her mother wanted for her. She knew her choice. Rosa did not take the ring. Instead, she took his hand and helped him to his feet. "I don't want your family, Donatello," she said softly. "I want to build our own." She used her mother's fortune not to wage war, but to build peace. She created the Angelina Foundation, a legitimate empire of shipping and trade. One by one, she approached the members of the old crime family, offering them honest jobs, good salaries, and a chance at a life without looking over their shoulders. Those who refused were cut off, their power made useless by her legitimate control of all the money. Donatello stood by her side, not as a boss, but as her partner, her strategist, and her fiercest protector. He was no longer the wolf of the underworld, but the guardian of a new kingdom. On the opening day of their flagship corporate office, a crowd gathered. Rosa stood at the podium, Donatello's hand in hers, ready to cut the ribbon. As the cameras flashed, a hush fell over part of the crowd. A frail, older woman, her face lined with years and kindness, stepped forward. She had Rosa's eyes. Tears welled in the woman's eyes as she looked at Rosa, then at Donatello. "My brave, stubborn Donatello," she whispered. She then turned to Rosa, her voice strong and clear. "I knew you two would find a way to finish what I started." It was Angelina. She had been living in quiet seclusion, watching from afar, waiting for the day the poison of her father's world was finally cleansed. Rosa, Donatello, and her mother embraced, a circle finally closed, a promise finally kept. They were not a crime family. They were just a family. They had faced lies, betrayal, and death, and had chosen a different path, a path of truth, loyalty, and a fierce, unbreakable love. They had their forever. And so, the shy waitress and the feared mafia boss found their peace not in the shadows, but in the light. They proved that the past doesn't have to define your future, and that the greatest strength isn't in ruling through fear, but in building with love. Their story is a reminder that even in the darkest of worlds, a new beginning is always possible. We've just journeyed through secrets, shootouts, and a shocking family reunion. If this story of forbidden love and ultimate redemption had you on the edge of your seat, then you need to subscribe. We have so many more epic tales like this one, full of twists that will leave you gasping. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what you would rate this wild love story out of 10.